In this video, I'm going to pick up exactly where the last video dropped off, which is we just downloaded a file of points collected from ArcGIS Online and initially collected using Collector. Here I've got the zip file that I downloaded, and what I'm going to show you here is the last time I'm going to involve File Explorer from Microsoft, from Windows, in what we do. I'm going to unzip this file and I'm going to say extract all, and I'm going to send it to a folder. And so I've sent those files out to a folder. In your case, you probably want to send it out to a folder called something like Lab 1. And now I have points that look probably a lot like points you yourself downloaded. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to find those using ArcGIS Pro. So I'm going to say start without a template. I do this because I like to start with nothing really showing, from fairly bare bones arrangement. And you'll see here I have a few things open, but not much going on. And what I like to start with, and I urge you to do the same, is Catalog View. I like to do this because it allows me to look my data over. And the first thing you do in Catalog View is just tell the program where to find your data. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a folder connection. So I'm going to go to the location where I've saved my data, which in this case is... Now what I tend to do is cast a wide net. I'm connecting to my folder called 286, which has everything I use for this class in it somewhere. And that means theoretically I can find it later on. So if you're working on a lab computer, what I recommend you do is create a folder for today and put everything into that folder, and then zip that folder up and send it to yourself via Google Drive or Box or whatever. You can probably get away with emailing it, but this early in the semester our files aren't very large. So now I've got 286 and I can find anything I want to in 286. So I've just created a folder called Demos, and there are the points. That's where I unzipped the file to. So if everything's gone according to plan, once you download your files from Arc Online, you'll be able to see them once you unzip them in the folder once you tell it where to look. I recommend taking your time with all of this. Data management, just being able to find your stuff, is really crucial. So if you're ever finding yourself going, I have no idea what this file is, well, in Arc Catalog, I can rename these points, and I think I will, because they've got this generic name. I'll look at them and I'm like, which points are those? And so I'm going to name them my points. And I'll even put my name on it just in case I want to share these. K-C. So they're my points. I know that's where they are. The place to rename files is Arc Catalog. Don't try to do this in Map. And it's worth stepping back for a moment and noting that this thing we call a shapefile is at least several files. In order to have a shapefile open in Arc, you have to have three things, minimally. If you don't have these three files, nothing's going to happen. Arc won't even see it. So you need to have a file called SHP and a file called DBF. Those are really the nuts and bolts of this. And SHX. You'll notice they all have the same prefix, and I can name this whatever I want to. As you'll see, or as you've seen in Arc, renaming's really easy when you're in Catalog because you don't have to rename all 5 of these. Or in some cases you'll have shapefiles that'll have 7 or 8 entries. It just depends on how much information you have. So the way to think about a shapefile is it combines 2 things principally. An SHP, which is the instructions for drawing all the stuff. You can think of this as just a gigantic data table full of coordinates. They're arrayed differently depending on whether those coordinates identify a point, which is just a single x and y coordinate, or a line, which is a whole string of x and y coordinates, or a polygon, which is a string of x and y coordinates that begin and end at the same xy coordinate. So a closed line. So this is all the stuff that makes it possible to draw a shapefile. DBF is the attribute table. DBF is a generic database format that goes way back to the dawn of computation, or close to it. It's just an old format for storing data in what looks like a spreadsheet. in tabular format. We refer to these as data tables. So this is the data table for this shapefile. This thing called SHX is called an indexing file. Basically, it makes it easier for ARC to navigate the contents of both of those other two files. So it allows ARC to find stuff fast. In this particular case, we have two additional files. CPG, I can never remember what that does. It's not absolutely essential. But somebody find the answer and we'll talk about it on VoiceThread sometime. And then PRJ, which is the projection information for this file. This file we downloaded from ARC Online, and they send the projection information of the file. They use by default Web Mercator using the WGS84 datum. We're going to project this file into state plane. So I've got my points. I can look at their properties. I can see that there they are. I can see a data table showing me all the points. Also look at the spatial properties of these points. I can right click and see that they are in Web Mercator, which is the projection used by ARC Online. I'll probably want to project these. And so from within Catalog, before I add a map, I'm going to go to Analysis, click on Tools, and find the projection tool. You can search for it using Project up here. I recommend getting to know the toolbox a little bit, and projection lives under Data Management Tools. The reason I recommend this is browsing these tools helps you figure out what the tools are. Under Data Management, there's a Projections and Transformations folder, and from that you can find the Project tool. The way this works is I'm just taking the existing version of this file, and I'm going to, you'll see by default it just names it the same thing as that file with project at the end. I'm going to change that to SP for state plane. But first, I'm going to browse and make sure that this is saving to the location I want it to be saving to, and it isn't, but I'm not going to correct that right now. Yeah, I will. And when I do this, I browse to that folder. I'm just clicking on the original name and copying it, and I'm adding SP because I'm going to project this file into the state plane projection using the North American datum of 1983 for the state of Maryland. And so I'm going to tell it that right here. Now the way to find this is projected coordinate systems and then state plane, and then you got to be real careful about this. You want this one, NAT 83 US feet, nothing else, no Corsi US feet, just US feet. And then within that folder you will find Maryland. There we are. There's just one. And then I'm going to project that file. And now I have it in state plane. So those are the steps for taking the downloaded file that you created using Collector out in the field. Once you've zipped it up at ARC Online, you've taken that file, the zipped file, unzipped it, opened it up in Catalog, examined its properties, which I urge you to do with any file you're using for the first time, and then you've projected it in Catalog. You'll notice right now I have not opened a map. I'm just doing data management stuff. I do data management stuff in Catalog. And I'll add just one thing. Sometimes when you process a file, and by the way, you might notice whenever you open a tool, this thing called the geoprocessing window opens. That just means you've opened a tool. But when you are done processing it, after you click Run, your file may not appear here. If it doesn't, right-click and say Refresh, and it probably will unless there's an error.